Fingerstyle acoustic blues. It's a great sound, one that I love, and it really is rewarding to get such a big bluesy sound out of your acoustic guitar, but it's not easy. But there might actually be some things that we do when we're learning new material that make fingerstyle playing a bit more difficult than it needs to be. I think I do that. I make things more difficult than it needs to be when learning new material. It's a bad habit that I constantly fight, but when I get smart about my practice and do this one thing that we're going to talk about, I make much more progress. So what is it? It is simply slowing things down. You see, speed tends to hide simple things in plain sight, and just speeding up makes things more complicated, or at least makes them seem more complicated. But something happens that's really cool when we slow down. We get to see the smaller, manageable elements of the entire piece. So let's slow things down and take a closer look at an example 12-bar blues. You're going to see that there really are just about 3 key elements that we need to focus on. Let's dig in. Let's take a look at just this little part of the opening riff, because the thumb's job here is really just pushing through the strings. The 6th string to the 5th. Notice I'm resting on the 5th when I get there, then push through again, rest on the 4th, push through a 3rd time, and rest on the 3rd. And if we add our little melody to it in the bass, we're just picking up the ring finger on the fret hand from the 2nd fret and playing that open D note and then back. Right? There's really nothing fancy going on with the thumb here. When we play it slowly, we can see that. That's all you need to do to get, honestly, the meat of this entire jam. There's so many things that circle around this riff. And yeah, we're going to decorate it a little bit as we go along, but that's the heart of it right there. So if you can push through the strings like this, you've got it. Now, when we play this fast, the thumb certainly gets moving. But use that idea of resting on the next string. It gives you a target and somewhere to kind of shoot for and some stability in your picking, so that as you bring the tempo up, you'll do it with good technique. All right, so what we're going to do is start decorating that idea, starting with this little move where we're going to pinch the 3rd string open and the 1st string open and hammer into the G sharp, which is right there in our E chord. And if you can't do that, just pick it, right? We can work that cool little quick hammer on in later. And we'll work our way through the progression, changing things slightly. So the next decoration is a couple of upstrokes here. And then this one. Let's talk about that one, because we do our sort of opening part of the riff, right? And then back to the 6th string, a little strum up, and then I'm putting my little finger down on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string and pulling off down to the 1st, right? It can be hard to see that. It's a real subtle movement with the fret hand as I pull off and then play the 4th string as an ending. So far we've got quite a few little endings here. Going to change things up a little bit for the 4th measure. It's always a good place to do it because we're moving into a chord change. But notice that our thumb picking, that's really what I want to focus on in this first 4-bar section. We'll talk about some other things in just a second, but It really is doing that one single movement. I think that's a core element to pull out of this piece of music, and you might not see it if you're trying to play it super fast. Before we move on, let's unpack that phrase super fast, because super fast might mean something different to you than it does to me, than it does to another player. And that's okay, because we all need to find our own Goldilocks tempo, a tempo that's not too fast, that's not too slow, that's just right for us. So how do we do that? Well, too fast, we really know, because we're starting to make a bunch of mistakes and things just seem a lot harder. We need to slow down. So immediately, rule of thumb, learn things at a slower tempo than you think you need to. But how slow should you go? Obviously, you can practice and put your metronome clicking along at 20 beats per minute, and you could play that. But that is so slow that you're going to lose the beat. You're not going to know when the next beat is coming around, because there's too much time there for you to gauge it accurately. All right, so we're looking for something that you can feel the pulse of and you don't lose the beat, but it's slow enough that you can get your hands to do what they're supposed to do with plenty of space and ideally less errors. We kind of breezed by this little technique, but it occurs quite often throughout this composition, and it is the index finger doing these little brush ups, just strumming up through the top 2, sometimes 3 strings while you're playing. It's a good way to kind of add some texture and contrast to this bassy riff. And you can throw them in different places. If we go back to the first few bars, we've got this, that cool little hammer-on piece, and then we've got this with 2 brush ups at the end. And we covered this little pull-off move in the next measure, but just before it, we've got one of those brush ups. And then finally, bass brush up, and then kind of completing our riff in place. But we do that twice. Now, when we change chords, we're going to do a lot of those brush ups. Check this out. We move into our A7 chord. We still kind of do that thumb thing by pushing through the 5th string and now the 4th string. And then I need to make sure I've got an A7 fretted, because I'm just going to do 4 brush ups in a row. Right? All right, and we can slow that down. Let's do that. I love using brush ups as a way to fill out my sound, and really when it comes to techniques, it's just strumming up through the strings. And when you have your chord held down, you don't have to be super careful about which strings you hit. It's going to sound like it belongs, right? There I hit the 3rd string, and then I pull it all the way through to the 4th string. So almost anything is legal here. It really is just trying to add that bigger sound, fill out the sound. That's what those are all about. And I think this recurs so much in this piece that it's a core element that we can stop and pay attention to and combine it with our thumb picking at that slow tempo to really gain some ground on learning a piece like this. But there's something that I've been doing the whole time that I consider to be another core element, and it's right there, even in the opening riff. Let's take a look. We could play this riff like this, right? And have our fingers kind of moving around on the fretboard. That doesn't really give us a framework of where our fingers should be. And sometimes that's okay, we just need to hit the notes, but if we lock into a chord, then we'll know which finger needs to play which fret. And we're gonna move around a lot less. And that's okay to do, because especially in fingerstyle blues, we need to be flexible to be able to do some other things, right? We need some options. So moving around less is actually a good thing. Yes, I know it looks cool to do all this stuff and fly up the fingerboard, but in a lot of country blues, we're planted to a chord. And if you think about it, we've covered 2 chord shapes already. We went from the E up to our A7, and over the A7 part, I held this shape the entire time. And right there, when I did this pull-off, which is a pull-off on the 2nd string, so I've got my A7 covered, but I'm pulling off. And notice that pull-off, I do release my hand from the fretboard, and that's when I come down and change into the E. So I'm not changing to the chord shape at the top of the next measure, where it looks like on tab and notation you would change, because then I just have to do that. Instead, I'm using that moment to go ahead and fret that note with the right finger from the chord that I'm going to, an E major in this case. And then we're going back to our riff. Same thing. Here we've just got the easy thumb pushing through the 5th string and then followed by some brush ups. We do walk into it. I love walking into my B7 this way. So backing up, right? But notice that I could have just done this or something else. This feels natural, but it also sets me up to play the B7 part that I need. And we're going to walk down and use some of the tricks that we've learned already, right? We're going to play out of our chord shape here. Then when we do our pull off to go back to E, I'm doing it, and when I'm in the air, I'm forming and getting ready to play that E before wrapping up. With our familiar riff set there. Now that we've covered the 3 elements and we see how they come together into this composition, let's slow things way down and have a listen, because honestly, I think this piece sounds good, maybe even better at a slower tempo. So practice slowly and then find out how fast you want to take it and then dial in your performance tempo. I personally think when I play this piece, I'm going to play it at a much slower tempo than I did in the opening. But let's have a listen. To me, this piece sounds doable when you slow it down, and it sounds just as good, maybe even better at a slower tempo. So if you're struggling with fingerstyle acoustic blues, start here. Start by slowing down. It may not be the magic fix that you're looking for, but I can tell you when I intentionally slow things down, I make more progress in less time. It's weird, but it's absolutely true for me. Slow down to speed up. But the thing is, finding the right material at the right time is really important when you're struggling with acoustic blues. You're looking for that next piece that will get you to the next level. So watch this video next for a beginner-friendly study that will help you move through things at a slow tempo while stacking skills along the way. I'll see you over there. Until next time, practice smart and play on.